When we hear the term climate change, we all seem to know what it is, but do we really know this phenomenon, what causes it, and its potential consequences for us and the world in which we live? To understand what climate change is, we must first understand how it works and what is the so-called greenhouse effect. The sun emits energy that reaches our planet in the form of what we call solar radiation. It comes into contact with the atmosphere that covers it, which reflects a good part of it back to space, and another part it lets it through. A portion of this radiation, in turn, is reflected by the Earth itself into the atmosphere, and another is absorbed by it. From the radiation that reaches the atmosphere, one percentage continues into space and the other is reflected back to the Earth, where it is finally absorbed. This radiation behavior is what is known as the greenhouse effect. One generally associates it with something bad, when in reality it is thanks to it that there is life on planet Earth. If it were not for a greenhouse effect, the average temperature in its surface would be 18 degrees Celsius below zero, and the difference in temperature between night and day would be more than 100 degrees Celsius. The atmosphere that surrounds our planet is composed of various gases, which, in the right proportions, fulfill their function. However, when there is an excessive amount of gases, such as carbon dioxide or methane, these block the radiation from going out to space, provoking for a greater amount of it to be reflected back to Earth, causing, when absorbed in a higher proportion, an increase in the planet's average temperature. This rise in temperature of the entire planet is what we know as global warming. This warming is what produces the climate change that we are experiencing today. If we try to go back and look for a point in history where the beginning of this problem can be singled out, it is undoubtedly the Industrial Revolution, since from then on, the emission of gases that produce a greater greenhouse effect went off. All this derived from a new production and consumption model. At that time, the world population was around 700 million people, a number that has grown to more than 7.7 billion today. Such growth, and increasingly excessive consumption of resources, increased demand and production of energy obtained through fossil fuels, have caused the Earth to have entered what is known as Anthropocene, a geological era motivated by the impact of the human being on the planet. The main effect has been a rise of 1.1 degrees Celsius in the global temperature of the planet, although it is estimated that by the end of the century it may increase to 4.8 degrees Celsius, despite the commitments to reduce emissions achieved by several countries worldwide. Although this may not sound like a big deal to the average human being, the truth is that it has a great big impact on the world in which we live. On one hand, this causes the ice mass at the poles to melt, which in turn produces an increase in the sea level, causing flooding and threatening the shorelines. In fact, some small insular countries have the risk of disappearing. On the other hand, climate change generates an increase in violent meteorological phenomena, acidification of the oceans, changes in ecosystems and desertification, fires, extinction of animal and plant species, overflow of rivers and lakes, massive migration seeking refuge from the climate, and the destruction of livelihoods and economic resources, especially in less developed countries. It is clear that the consequences of climate change can, or in fact are already being disastrous, although from the comfort of our home we do not appreciate it or live it so closely. Unfortunately, this phenomenon is not avoidable as such, since it is something that happens naturally on our planet. On other occasions it has been heated or cooled, only in cycles that needed millions of years. However, currently, as a result of human activity, we are reaching consequences that at other times brought massive extinctions in a period of just 200 years. Although this phenomenon of the planet cannot be averted, we can reduce its effects and adapt to the circumstances that it produces. That is, we can combat it by applying small and large-scale measures to help slow it down. These mitigation measures include implementing actions to reduce and limit greenhouse gas emissions to prevent the global temperature of the planet from continuing to rise. This can be achieved by investing more in renewable energies, so that a transition can be made towards a low-carbon economy, which eventually allows for a carbon-neutral planet to be reached. This means that the net result of carbon emissions is zero. For this purpose, there are also measures to set the price of carbon at a level high enough to encourage the investment of governments and companies towards less polluting production and consumption models. Although these measures can partially mitigate the effects of climate change, it is also important to follow adaptation actions to reduce vulnerability to them. These include improving facilities and infrastructure in a way that they are safer and more resilient, reforestation and landscape restoration, water treatment and purification, flexible and varied crops, investing in research and development of technologies that help prevent and cope with natural disasters or to predict with certainty the possible appearance of atmospheric phenomena. To achieve a result that really has an impact of considerable magnitude, international collaboration is necessary through organizations such as the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or treaties such as Conference of the Parties, the Montreal Protocol, or the Paris Agreement, signed from 2015 and which represented a turning point in the climate negotiations, because, for the first time, all countries agreed to establish measures to curb global warming. But finally, the actions that governments around the world can take will be of no use if each of us as individuals do not do our part to make our carbon footprint as small as possible, from reducing the use of internal combustion vehicles as means of transportation and putting pressure on our local governments to invest in renewable energy, to the commitment to our neighbor and the planet itself to act in a way that we always seek to preserve the place we live in, and that, if we do not take care of it, won't disappear, but maybe we do. If you like this video, please share it with your friends and acquaintances and subscribe to our channel so we can do more like this. Thank you very much.